Hello, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm from Esomar, based in this moment in Rome. I'd like to introduce to you Joachim Breccia, who is the Esomar director the Director General of Esomar. Sorry. And well, Joachim will introduce the session and will give you some news about some small changes in the program. Hi, Joachim.
Thank you, Anna. Can we share the presentation, Anna?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, this is as it is called, community circle. It's if you want, it has this air of being closer. I mean, it's not just a one-directional session. So we will have some time for for Q&A, questions, answers, comments, and so on. And what we are looking for is to have some interaction. I mean, not just only one way, but the two ways interaction following all the presentations that we are going to have. So yeah, so Anna, is the presentation?
Yes, Joachim?
I cannot see it, sorry. I cannot see the presentation.
We can see it.
You can see it?
We can see it, yeah.
Okay, so it's me then.
No, I can't see it. Sorry, I can't see it either.
No, nor can I.
Really?
Sorry, maybe it's me doing something wrong.
No, I can't see it either, Joachim. I
No,
think there are
I
a couple of
can't
people
see
that can't.
either.
Now I
You
see
can't
it.
see it?
Now I see it. Sorry. Now I see it.
I can't see it either. Sorry.
I think you need to push on the presentation on the right hand side of the screen instead of looking the people looking at the presentation. Yeah. Well, if not, just let me start. This is, as I was mentioning, what we call community circle is this, if you want, a bit more informal gathering, included in what we call the Africa Plan 24-26. This is a plan that we created last year because we understood that Africa had some special needs. And from Esomar, we wanted to bring the Africa communities together. I mean, now we're commenting at the beginning, we had from Morocco to South Africa, from Nigeria to Kenya, so north, south, east, west. We are totally aware that this continent is so rich and so diverse that it's very important that we can take all these communities together in order to meet and know each other. Also, we want to boost this training, providing network and business opportunities by creating community, going beyond the country and having the perspective of the region, the continent, reinforce the dialogue with all African associations. It's very important, and from Esomar, we are true believers that stronger we are together if we work together, associations, Esomar from global perspective, and we can cooperate and learn from each other and share knowledge and experiences. And very importantly, I mean, I'm very happy that in the presentation at the beginning, somebody coming from the UK, it's important that we include Africa on the Esomar Global Calendar. It's important that we give Africa visibility in the market research whole industry. And this is precisely what we are trying to do. If we go to the coming slides, Anna, this Africa plan comes with an advisory committee formed by these outstanding people from the region: Serge Mumbu from Congo, Sami Gabriel from Egypt, Alin Gessen from Ivory Coast, Jonathan Karanja from Kenya, Nabil Abu Zaid from Morocco, Sia Malek from Morocco, Seyadeh from Nigeria, Yosha Ebomneye and Victor Ebomneye from Nigeria, Aisato Mar from Senegal, Stacy Grant from South Africa, Jan Fegelin from South Africa, and Andrea de Meyer from South Africa as well. These are the people that have been helping us in conforming this Africa Plan 24-26. And the activity for this year starts today with this online community. It's follow on next April 15th with this special community for the French-speaking community in Africa, talking about online and mobile communities. Then we will have an in-presence gathering in Nairobi, followed by activity in English, again, presence Lagos, again, French, community circle, another in presence in Morocco, and then online community circle at the end of the year. It's important to mention that last year we also had these community circles, and we ended at the end of the year with 2 in-presence events in South Africa, 1 in Morocco. And it's very important because what we want to do is to shake the community in Africa, create momentum, in order to land at the beginning of next year, 2026, with a regional in-presence event. Esomar has an Asia Pacific event, a Latam event. We have a North America event. We have the Global Conference, Global Congress, that every 4 years in a row it's in Europe. Then we move to North America, but so Europe has its own events as well. And we thought that it was important that we had also an in-presence event. So we are already working to host this event, in-presence event, at the beginning, first quarter of 2026. And news will come soon. So allow us to announce this very soon. So that's a promise. Of course, we need to have everything together. I mean, there is some challenges in terms of finance and getting the mass and everything. So that's why we create this momentum to create this tension and this excitement to go and meet together in next year, beginning of next year. And this session was prepared and curated by Stacey Grant, head of CMI of Unilever South Africa. Unfortunately, she cannot join us today. Oh, sorry, we can mute. Anna, can you please mute? Can you please mute everybody? Yeah. So Stacey Grant cannot join us today, and I have the privilege of replacing her in the presentation and moderation of this community circle.
Joachim, you've been muted. Sorry.
You're muted, Joachim.
Joachim, we lost you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Maybe you muted everybody, including me. Thank you. Now, okay, so allow me to introduce Stacey Grant. She cannot be with us today. Stacey is head of Consumer and Market Insights Africa at Unilever Africa, where she has developed different regional roles for the last 17 years. She's a superb expert on Africa and the reality of the market research sector and profession in the region, in the continent. And she has prepared this session with much care. So it's unfortunate that she cannot make it. I'm happy that I'm privileged to replace her. So allow me to share with you the words that she had prepared, because I think they are quite relevant. So she welcomes you to this event focused on understanding and better serving Africa's youth. Today, we gather to explore the dynamics of a demographic that is not just the future, but very much the present of our continent. This is a youthful continent. Africa is often referred to as the youngest continent, and for compelling reasons. As of 2015, youth aged 15 to 24 constituted 19% of the global youth population, numbering 26 million. By 2030, so in 5 years, this number is projected to increase by 42%. Currently, 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25, making it the continent with the youngest population globally. This burgeoning of youth population is driving rapid urbanization. This is a huge trend as well in Africa. By 2035, so in 10 years, 6 African cities, Luanda, Dar es Salaam, Cairo, Kinshasa, Lagos, and Greater Johannesburg, are expected to have populations exceeding 10 million. The urban population is projected to approach 1 billion by 2035, with East Africa leading this growth. Such demographic trends present immense economic opportunities. If harnessed effectively, Africa could realize a demographic dividend amounting to as much as $500 billion a year for 30 years. We have challenges and responsibilities. These opportunities come with challenges. Youth unemployment remains high, with rates varying from 13% in sub-Saharan Africa to 30.6% in North Africa. Young women face even higher unemployment rates, often due to gender inequalities in education and the workforce. The role of brands and marketeers is very important, is special. As marketeers, brand managers, and strategists, we have a pivotal role in engaging this dynamic demographic. Understanding their values, aspirations, and behaviors is crucial. Our discussions today aim to uncover insights into how African youth interact with brands and make purchasing decisions. In conclusion, Africa's youth are not just a statistic. They are the driving force of our continent's future. And by focusing on their needs and perspectives, we can create products, services, and messages that resonate, leading to shared growth and prosperity. Thank you for joining today, and let's embark on this insightful journey together that will start with the participation of our first speaker, Andrea Krauschar, Research and Insights Director from Youth Dynamics, South Africa. Andrea, according to your profile, you're a specialist in youth and millennial marketing, strategic consultant, qualitative researcher, and branding. Andrea, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to just take control and share my screen. Let me just do that real quick. If you can give me half a second. You should all be able to see my screen.
Now.
All right, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Perfect. So I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to the changing expectations of young people. I've touched on a couple of things that I'm hoping you'll find interesting. And I think I'd like to just reiterate what Joachim said now in terms of the potential of this market, not just, sort of for the future, but definitely for now. So I'm going to just start off with one slide quickly on the key drivers shaping African youth today. Obviously, as you will know, the environment has changed rapidly in the last couple of years. And what our youth are facing is a very uncertain macro environment that's obviously been playing out over the last couple of years, and I think will continue to play out in the next couple of years. These various factors that I'm sharing with you, I'll hopefully paint a picture on the next couple of slides in terms of how these factors are impacting how the youth are showing up these days and what their expectations are from brands. Another important key driver in terms of the youth today is their living arrangements. A lot of our research shows that, especially from an Africa perspective, but I think also globally, youth are staying at home a lot longer. They are living in multi-generation households or family units. And this obviously affects how they are engaging with family, the importance of family, and also how they're influencing purchasing decisions within the family environment. Also, our youth are dealing with very high levels of unemployment. It's not a big surprise, I think, from an SA perspective, I think also from an Africa perspective, and even from a global perspective, it's a very harsh reality that many of our young people have to face. Another key factor is feelings of pressure, stress, and uncertainty, and very high levels of awareness and acceptance in terms of mental health. There's a lot of conversations, especially amongst Gen Zs and millennials, around mental health, how to deal with mental health, high levels of awareness. They're very aware of the topic and obviously trying to help and navigate each other with regards to these levels of pressures and stresses. And I'll go through now in the next slide how this manifests in terms of how they're showing up. And then the last one is really the lack of trust in traditional structures and leadership. And this a lot of the time includes brands, companies, corporations, institutions, governments, and a lot of the time people in power. And this is really, it's kind of, these are really 5 key factors that are shaping how our youth are showing up. They are influencing the decisions that they're making, how they're re-looking at their lives, how they're considering, what stability means to them, what authenticity means to them, how they're, sort of viewing the world around them, and how they're kind of showing up in that. In terms of the results and the changed youth expectations, I'm going to paint a very brief picture around how today's youth are showing up. I think a lot of us who are potentially from an older generation have a very negative and sometimes distorted view of how young people are these days. We often feel that they are maybe naive or frivolous, and that they can quite easily be influenced by the media. But what we see from a lot of the research that we're doing, that young people these days are highly resourceful. They're very much deeply committed to continuous self-development, and they're very discerning, skeptical, and driven individuals who are not necessarily looking for handouts, but who actually want to be taken seriously. And from a lot of the research that we do, we see that brands often don't take youth as seriously as they should, or the youth would obviously like them to. So what has changed in terms of how youth are today compared to previously? So firstly, which I touched on just now, and I'm not going to go through all these points for clarity's sake now, I'm just going to touch on the key things. So they firstly have a high sense of self-reliance. This is very different to previous generations. Our research shows that from a young age, because of the information age, because of their exposure to technology and the digital world, they are encouraged to search, filter, and analyze information. They have information of any size, shape, or form available at the touch of a button. And this means that they are a generation that is very autonomous. They are searching for answers all of the time. They are very pragmatic in their approach. And they, a lot of the time, are relying on themselves to make things happen and to fix things, as opposed to, governments or politicians or, people in power, brands, corporations, institutions. They also have a very highly entrepreneurial spirit, and this is something that we see in SA as well as across the continent. They are inherently entrepreneurial. You'll see from the stats in SA, we have 1 in 3 who are actively pursuing a side hustle. And from an Africa perspective, 91% aspire to start a business, with 1 in 5 viewing self-employment as their only job option. And entrepreneurship isn't necessarily only driven by innovation, necessity, and the desire for economic empowerment, but it's also the opportunity for young people of any age to be enabled. They're starting side hustles and wanting to own their own business for a variety of reasons, including being more independent, generating necessary income and funds, supplementing employment that they can't necessarily find. That's pretty much how they're operating today, often not looking at a, sort of one job approach that you keep for your lifetime. They're also very much defined by individuality. Every study that we conduct, we see how individualistic today's Gen Zs and millennials are. They are faced with a plethora of variables, values, interests, and opportunities, as well as encouraged to express their diverse thinking, opinions, and perspectives, through things like social media, where they can obviously have a voice. And how this manifests in terms of how brands need to be responding is that, it's not as easy as, looking at a cookie cutter approach or following one kind of influencer or one kind of trend that is popular amongst the youth. What we're seeing is that it's becoming a lot more difficult to kind of homogenize the youth, and it's really, really critical to understand them from a country perspective, from a region perspective, from an age perspective, from a interest perspective, and really get to understand the individuals behind the data that we're presenting to clients. We've also seen from the research that we've done as what we call the rise of the prosumer. And this is very much a definition that we've coined, which showcases that young people today have a voice, ability, and willingness to advocate or cancel brands, not just to purchase brands. Some of the research that we've done shows that young people today very much expect good customer service and brand experiences from brands, not just a good or functional product or service. These consumers are also very highly trusting reviews, where they want to hear from other consumers who have purchased a product or service around positives and negatives, so that they can use that in their decision-making process when they're choosing a particular product, brand, or service. And they, as individuals, will often share negative experiences and not support brands that don't meet their expectations. So they're very happy to leave either a positive or a negative review if they're not happy with brands. Our research also shows that young people today are far more fiscally aware than previous generations. They can be very frugal with their money. They're very astute in terms of the decisions that they're making. A lot of the time, they are prioritizing savings and investments. They recognize the importance thereof, and they have very high aspirations to live a comfortable life and strive for financial freedom, not just in terms of being materialistic consumers. And a lot of this is informed by the uncertainty that obviously they're growing up in. You know, they don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And this is very much fueling how they are, you know, sort of approaching money and finances. And as I mentioned earlier, the ongoing levels of stresses means that youth are often constantly in survival mode because they're always hustling, you know, to make ends meet, not just from a financial perspective, but also in terms of meeting their goals and getting to where they're trying to get to. From a back to basics perspective, our research has also showed that young people today focus on important values. I've listed some on the screen here: authenticity, trust, credibility, integrity, kindness, and dignity. These are really, really important to young people today. We've seen a very dramatic shift in terms of them being more about morals and values, and actually trusting brands that support certain types of values that they align to. And we've also seen that they trust their inner circle. So we call this, you know, people who are close within their kind of inner circle, either close friends and families, which includes reviews. And they often lose a lot of trust in terms of entities such as celebrities, big business, and government, which I mentioned earlier on, which isn't necessarily a big surprise because a lot of the time these people have kind of let the young people down. And then I'd like to just close off with some thought starters in terms of how brands can actually connect with youth in the future. It's very much about building an emotional connection, which really requires a deep understanding of this generation and connecting with them where it counts, which is obviously where market research comes in. So a couple of key points to think about. So from a brand perspective, we want to offer young people a breadth and depth of information so that they can self-help. As I mentioned earlier on, they are very much self-reliant. They are going online, looking for things, self-searching, you know, getting information on brands, etc. And they expect websites that are intuitive. They expect information about brands so that they can actually self-help. They also, as I mentioned, from a values perspective, expect brands to openly and authentically share about their businesses. They want to know, you know, how are businesses operating in the world? You know, where are they based? What is their objective? What difference are they making in the world? How are they helping communities? And they really expect businesses and brands to be open, honest, and real. Another point is very much about encouraging reviews. I spoke very briefly about how important reviews are, and young people expect brands to encourage feedback at every touch point from a consumer journey perspective, including the research element. You know, we obviously do a lot of research with young people, and they absolutely love giving their views and opinions. They like to be part of the process, and a lot of the time they have really, really important things to say that brands need to know about. Then lastly, they expect you to provide inspirational, informative, and supportive content. Obviously, social media content is, you know, kind of highlighted as one of the most key content areas where they're obviously engaging and getting their content. but they really are looking for content that can support, advice that can help them navigate. They're looking for something that is more strategic. It's not just advertising. A lot of them, distrust advertising and don't just want straight advertising, but they're looking for brands to kind of help them along their journey, help them with where they're trying to get to, in terms of their dreams and their visions. And then lastly, it's really about not underestimating the importance of human engagement. In today's era, we all want to be digitally connected. Obviously, in terms of youth, digital is very important, and often campaigns are digitally first. But interestingly enough, a lot of our research shows that youth absolutely expect human engagement. They want customer service. They often want those authentic, honest, competent conversations, opportunities to deal with, humans behind the brand, to actually make their final decision in the process. So just my parting thoughts, loyalty doesn't really come from being the one night stand. It's very much about brands needing to display consistent values, give back to consumers beyond the point of purchase, and present and engage in youth culture. I hope I haven't gone over my time too much.
Thank you, Andrea. Is there any question from the audience to Andrea's presentation? Yeah, no questions. So, well, we'll have at the end the panel discussion. So now let's move to the next speaker. We have Nyambura Mambo, Head of Market Research and Customer Insights from Safaricom from Kenya. Nyambura, after a long career in Coca-Cola Africa, in which she has held different positions, her last position being Channel Execution Senior Manager, Coca-Cola Africa Operating Unit. Nyambura, please, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. Really glad to have listened to Andrea's presentation because there's a lot of similarity to what I'll also be taking you through. So as Joachim said, I lead Safaricom. I know he's talked about Coca-Cola, but my current place of employment and where I'm using my passion and skills is at Safaricom. So the company that innovated M-Pesa. So M-Pesa is, I think, more familiar to many people. So I think before I start off with my presentation on how Safaricom is enabling the youth culture, I think it's important to take us back to some events that really shaped who the youth are today or how we view the youth. So June of last year, June and maybe a bit of July of 2024, the Kenyan youth went to the streets in protest because of a few reasons. One of the things that they protested about is the cost of living. The second thing that they protested about is the leadership and the choice of leadership, because we had new president in power, and they were not happy with the appointments that were made. And the third thing they were not happy about is the corruption, the persistent corruption, which of course is in many of our countries, including Kenya and Africa as a whole. And so I would say that the events of June/July 2024 were about the youth reintroducing themselves, us as researchers, but also as marketers, as strategists, or anyone who is interested in working with the youth or the next generation. The Kenyan youth reintroduce themselves to us. And I can tell you for a fact, in the past, we used to define the youth as being very individualistic. And what we saw in June and July of 2024 is that they actually community conscious, or they're socially conscious. We thought they just think about themselves and it's about me, myself, and I. But truly, they know what they bring to the table, and they know the power of coming together as a community. They used the power of community to do civic education. They used the power of community to do resource mobilization. I can tell you it was beyond our our wildest dreams to see the youth do this, right? We also thought that they care little or or even none about politics, but here they were, and millennials, we were in the house hiding, and and Gen X's, we were all in the house hiding, and they went out to say we are not happy with how the politics is going, and politics influences everything. And so this youth of today, and the Kenyan youth particularly, are not afraid to speak about politics or contribute about the subject of politics. We also thought they don't have any meaningful networks, they don't have money, and they are truly just depending on parents like ourselves who are on this call. But the truth is, with their passion to grow and their passion to monetize their gifts and their skills, they actually have money. And when they don't have money, they use their networks to get things working for them. And so what we saw in mid last year, is that they actually had lawyers working for them within their networks. We had translators, we had advisors, and they all mobilized this by themselves, and they got the resources for free. So whatever corporates pay a lot for, translations or corporate legal advice, they got it for free because of their cost. And so their networks are not limited, and they do have money, or they can monetize their own networks. They have resources at hand. We also thought that they just overuse digital and social media, and it's mostly for pastime and making them, it's the last thing they do when they get to bed, and it's more of entertainment. But what we saw is that the digital world and the social media is a true enabler of life, everyday life. Yeah, be it politics, be it business, you name it, digital and social media is it. So I may not call out all of them, but truly the Kenyan youth, and I think this is happening in many other countries, the youth have truly reintroduced themselves. In fact, we stopped calling them the youth. We call them the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, right? So it's just us who are slightly older generation who are still calling them the youth. And what we saw is that some new fundamentals really came, that for them, expression or self-expression is very, very critical. Be it in politics, be it socially, that remains very, very critical. Their passions go beyond sports and music. So in the past, we spoke about, sports and music and, the universal passions, regardless of the region. Their passions go beyond sports and music today. You saw how they got involved in politics. For them, and also Andrea mentioned this earlier, is that self-improvement is very critical. And they're not depending on their parents or their guardians, or what we call them godfathers, to get jobs. They know that they have something within their hands, a skill, something that they have learned that they can be able to use, to self-improve. And therefore, what we also saw is that they use community, they use their network to ensure that they move forward, and technology remains a core enabler of that. And so what has Safaricom done so far? I'll just give a few examples. Of course, there's so much more. And anyone who is interested to share some knowledge, of course, can reach out to me after this. So we call ourselves the youth enabler. So we champion the youth, we champion their passions, we enable them to monetize their passions, and we also offer products that are suitable for them. Let me start off with the easiest. In terms of products, just giving examples of what we have done as Safaricom M-Pesa. So as you know, M-Pesa is a mobile money platform, right? So, and I can tell you the last time, I went to the bank, I don't remember. The last time I used cash, I don't remember. Everything is done on our mobile phones, right? So now what we have done is to introduce M-Pesa specifically for the young ones, right? So for the Gen Z. So anyone above 12 years up to the age of 17 can actually use M-Pesa. So we are recruiting early, and we've customized this product to ensure that they start learning about financial planning, how to use money, the meaning of money, saving, doing their own payments. I registered my children who are, I have a teenager and a preteen the other day on M-Pesa Go, and they're quite excited. Of course, now I'm spending more money because then I have to send them. It has to have something. But anyway, so Safaricom has come up with the M-Pesa Go product to ensure that we are recruiting early, but also we are enabling our young consumers to really know about financial planning and just gain that financial acumen. The other thing that we have done is to customize our bundles or our data bundles to suit them. So TikTok is a big thing, and I know Jeremy will be talking about it. So we actually have what we call a TikTok bundle. Nyambura here, who is, I'll not say my age, but I'm not a youth anymore. I cannot access this bundle, even if I use, TikTok. But, we have a specific bundle for TikTok, and it's just suited for them. They can access it usually towards the evening hours because that's the time they would typically use it after their college or school, and they use it as a part of their downtime. And all this is actually offered under what we call the S-Hook platform. Okay, so after this session, I would encourage each of us to just go and read a little bit about the S-Hook platform. If you're a social media junkie, maybe go to Instagram and find our Safaricom Hook platform and see the kind of language that we use there. We are using what we call Swanglish, which is Swahili and English mixed together. So how we've started to connect with the youth is also just to ensure that we speak in the language that they understand. We speak in their natural language so they can fully connect with the Safaricom brand and hopefully also start to trust us and of course use our products. There are many other examples that play to music, which is bass and skiza, but also playing to affordability because of course they don't have the kind of money that maybe slightly older consumers would have, but they're building their own portfolio. So we still must address affordability. We also are involved in sports. Now, for us, sports is two-pronged. So it's more of community impact, but also enabling their passions. And if you're aware of what happens in Kenya, we have a very big platform, grassroots football platform, which is called Chapadimba. We've been doing this since 2017, and it's actually we work with the people, the rural youth. And these boys and girls come from the remotest of regions, and they start off at zonal level, they go into region, and then we get nationals. And eventually they actually go into either Spain or into the UK. And, they get scouted. I know for a fact that there's a number of players that came out of Chapadimba who are playing in Sweden, who are playing in Poland, who are playing in UK, really big international or global teams. So that's Chapadimba, and it's on soccer or football. And the unique thing about this is that we are also covering the girls. So many corporates or brands will typically do football for the boys. But nowadays, girls are also interested in soccer or football, and we are also, Safaricom has been the first one, at least in East Africa, to do this. We recently got engaging with the junior NBA, and the NBA team were on ground in Kenya about a month or so ago, and we're doing this with M-Pesa, enabling the youth, the young budding basketballers. And again, it's following the same process. Start at zonal levels, go to region, and eventually, hopefully, be scouted, by big big teams. So we are doing that as well on the sports side. The other one that we are doing is rugby, and especially rugby for ladies. And if you saw, I know the South Africans might be very aware of this one, is that we beat the South Africans last weekend with the Kenya rugby female team, and Safaricom is a lead sponsor on the same. So there are many things that we are doing from a marketing, but also community perspective. And recently, and you may also do a bit of a search on this one, we'll be involved in the Cannes okay, depending on which school you went to, sometimes you say Cairns, but really a big forum for creativity. And we're starting to invest in growing the creative excellence of the young people in Kenya. And we're actually a title sponsor on that, on the Young Lions. In terms of how we connect with them from a media perspective, there's many ways that we've done that. Some could be generic, of course, or can be exported to any other company, but we're doing things like strategic presence. Yeah, so going to the universities and ensuring that we're, fully branding where they actually hang out, and on top of that, providing Wi-Fi, because that's how then they actually connect. So at the same time, we are also using peer-to-peer influence. So I think Andrea spoke about the power of recommendation from someone and someone you believe and trust, and we're using that. So while we might use the big influencers, we are also using peer-to-peer influence after they try our products. Those are some examples that I may be able to give you today, given the time, but happy to share more in a smaller team.
Thank you, Nyambura. Is there any question, any comment from the audience?
Hi, I actually have a comment. Dolphin here from Kenya. So it's very good to see your presentation on some of the amazing initiatives that Safaricom has for Gen Zs. So it's just a comment from my end. Having grown up with Safaricom as a big brand, I have seen it evolve and taking into consideration some of the voices of the young people. I've seen it shape its initiative to benefit the young people, and I'm really proud of it. So thank you so much for bringing this to our attention.
Great. Thank you, Delphine. We are actually, M-Pesa is turned 18 last Friday. So we're out meeting the youth and just engaging with customers and, connecting the youth to Safaricom Hook, the platform where you can get, true enablement. We actually have scholarships that are offered through there, free connection circles. So there's a lot of info on the hook. Safaricom as well is celebrating 25 years of being in Kenya, or even in existence. So look out for more.
Thank you, Nyambura, Dolphin. Now we already see the preparation of the next speaker, Jeremy Hallow, founder and CEO of Listen and Learn Research. And I outstand that this company started as an idea born from a run in the woods, now has become an award-winning agency, Marketing Week, Aura, MRG, Esomar, and more awards that Jeremy holds. So Jeremy, please, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And wow, what an amazing couple of sessions we just had. Thank you both for such really, really interesting talks. And thank you, Esomar. It's a real pleasure to be here with everyone today. Can you see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Just checking because I can't see you all. So really now it's my turn to sort of bring this all home a little bit and talk about a huge part of youth culture, which is TikTok. I'd kind of like to start with a simple truth, which is that TikTok has become a really dominant force in how many consumers decide what to do, how to act, and what to buy, as we've just heard. It's from the clothes they wear, the music they listen to, what they eat, through to how they learn and interact with the world. But in market research, in the world that we live in, where we're used to surveys and focus groups, short form video can feel like it doesn't belong, but it does. Get my slides to go. Okay, good. So I wanted to start today by really sort of building your desire to do something a little bit different. And my plan for today was to leave you feeling and knowing, one, that TikTok is a vital source of consumer insight. The two, its impact on consumer behavior can be profound. And three, armed with the knowledge about where to start and what to do next. By the time we're done, I want you to be as keen to explore TikTok as this dog wants that pie. Social media and market research is often, I think, overlooked and misunderstood. In the early days, social media analysis, social media monitoring was used for kind of like recording campaign reputation risk, which has, I think, kind of limited our imagination of what you can do with it. It's kind of fooled us into thinking that social media is about brands, when actually we know it's much more about people and their lives. Of course, brands are important. They're just nowhere near as important as people are to each other. When you strip everything back and social media, with TikTok right at the center, is just mostly a collection of human stories. And as such, it really deserves its place in how we, as researchers, understand the world. TikTok and social media are important because they help us understand these worlds in a different way. And I think this comes down to three factors. The first one is that people don't talk to researchers the way they talk to each other, but they do on social media, which lets us observe their behavior really without biasing it or without getting in the way. The second point is that social data captures emotion, opinion, and experience as it happens. I use the analogy of the mosquito in the amber, without really relying on imagination and memory, which traditional methods do to a degree. And the final point is that social media continually influences and shapes the decisions of people engaging with it. And from that point, it's almost negligent from an insight point of view for us not to understand what's happening. And what we've seen with TikTok is this massive growth, and it's a sign of the changing nature of social media and how people are using it. Now, stats are hard to come by, but as a rough gauge, I think we have 33 million TikTok users in Egypt, 27 in Nigeria, 17 million in South Africa, 17 million in Algeria. And these are just kind of the top. So let's have a little look about how social has evolved. The rise of short form video has signaled the move to more engaging, more entertaining content. There's a shift to entertainment. TikTok really lit the spark by making this all so much more accessible and fun. Now, TikTok works because it's just really easy and it's really enjoyable to watch. No matter what your topic it is, it's just really easy. When you first start, it's totally bonkers, right? But give the algorithm some time, search for what you're interested in, and you'll soon start to get really hooked in the flow. It's just so easy to watch a stream of 1-minute TikToks that the algorithm knows that you're likely to enjoy. Sure, the other forms of social media, of course, they're still there and they're still important. But the early days of sharing status updates on Facebook are no longer the driver of really big engagements. TikTok is at the forefront of this change in consumer behavior, and it's so vital as a source of insight for emerging norms, ideas, and behaviors. This shift to entertainment is capturing and keeping people's attention, shifting the time they spend on media, and shaping how people are being influenced. The second big change that I wanted to talk about is really this shift from text search to social search. A recent Adobe study found that over 2 in 5 Americans use TikTok as a search engine. Now that's a huge shift in behavior, and it's completely intentional. TikTok wants to capture search. They developed this iPhone widget that you can see on the right, which shaves a few seconds off the search journey, but they did it for a reason. They want to keep people on TikTok. Now, my 16-year-old son's search path tends to start with TikTok, then he'll go into YouTube, and then he'll use Google as a last resort. But why would you read if you could watch? That's kind of his mentality. And this really is a fundamental change in behavior. It's massive when Google isn't the default search option. And from a research perspective, we need to understand this new behavior and bring it into our analysis. The final point kind of like builds on that last point about search, which is TikTok is capturing each stage of the consumer buying process. Now, if we think about McKinsey's sort of the way they thought about the consumer decision-making journey, which started with a trigger, moved on to awareness, consideration, ultimately to purchase and through to experience. Now, what we've got with TikTok is it provides this initial trigger. You see something, you realize you need it or you want it. You then search on TikTok for other examples or dig deep into the first one you saw, reading the comments and rewatching it. That's all the awareness and the consideration. Then the link takes you straight through to the TikTok shop where you can make the purchase and get it fulfilled. And the entire journey starts and stops on TikTok, often within minutes. Now, this poses a question. How can we fully understand what's happening in your market, in your category, if you don't understand what's happening on TikTok? If you have no presence or influence or insight about the platform, how are you going to be shaping demand? And I'll just close this section with just a quick word about in real life. Now, social media is often thought of as referred to as something that's other, somehow not real life. And I don't think that's very helpful. It's become a core fabric of our media landscape. What happens on social reflects and shapes what happens off social. To make a distinction between in real life and social, I think is limiting and dangerous. Social is real life, and we need to adapt our insight strategies to account for it. Now, I wanted to share with you some areas that TikTok content creators are active in to give you some flavor of the depth and the breadth. TikTok Discover celebrates the top 50 rising global content creators. So I'm going to focus on these ones that are from some amazing content creators in Africa. First off is education. And this is from inspiring their followers to advocating for change. These creators educate their community and entertain along the way. Whether they're teaching languages, exploring new technology, or highlighting ancient history, educators encourage us to discover something new and to learn more about the world. Now let's meet Roy Canil. He's from Kenya. He's a tech content creator. He helps people understand the differences between mobile phones, what they can do, how they work, what's the best option. He's got this great one where he's got a Samsung and an iPhone, and he's recording the same thing at the same time, and he can see the differences, and he shows people what the differences look like. He engages with his community about the phones they have. He helps answer their questions. And we might think, why is he important? Well, some of his videos, as you can see, are watched hundreds of thousands of times. Hundreds of thousands of people are turning to him to learn about which phone to get. The next category is something close to my heart, which is all about food. And they're taking viewers on mouth-watering adventures across their For You pages, inspiring #food talk trends around the globe. They're all adding their own creative spin on cuisine through cooking and baking and more, and it's all delicious. Now let's meet Chef Abyss. She works her passion for cooking and African food through her videos, which showcase Ghanaian culture, community, and tradition. She teaches people how to cook, cater, and become chefs through live and online cooking classes. She leads group tours to explore African food in Ghana. She teaches people how to become better online content creators. And then we've got the icons. So these creators need no introduction. They embody trends and culture and make an impact every day. They're well known on and off TikTok and are changing the game for content creators everywhere. They live and breathe TikTok culture and inspire others to do the same. And let's meet Charity Akezi. Charity's from Nigeria and started advocating for the entire continent of Africa when she realized how disrespectful and racist people can be towards its culture. She found out there are many unnecessary stereotypes about Africa all over the world and decided to change that by making videos as a way of educating people, often in a sarcastic way, about the things they didn't know about Africa. And this is one of my favorites.
My African brothers and sisters, come and see this.
One of the reasons that we think clay as a building material is actually the future of the construction industry.
The future of the construction industry. Wow.
It's wonderful versatility. You can make durable floors with it. You can carve it to form art, make bricks out of it for walls. Sculpt it to create free-flowing forms, polish it to make shiny plasters, pigment it to create color combinations of your desires.
What an amazing discovery that has never been discovered before in the existence of humankind.
Build ovens, benches, and even whole houses. Clay is such a versatile building material, and all the while you're having fun playing in the mud, creating community, and creating a better future.
You know, one thing I always say is that when it's us Africans that do it, it's called primitive. Now our clay, our architectural designs is the future and is a discovery. Something that we've been doing since the dawn of time. We've suffered in this life. Yeah. African brothers.
Then we have the innovators. I love this thing, it's brilliant. Then we have the innovators. These are putting a new twist on what it means to be a content creator. They're pioneers in their fields who have a unique point of view in their content and are not afraid to experiment and try something new. So let's meet Zero Brainer. I've watched a ton of this guy's TikToks. It's just insane. He gets so many views. Look, the 4.8 million of him and a bunch of his friends mucking around with a footballer. Right, this is also known as Fanuel John Masamaki from Tanzania, and he creates sports content videos to entertain and to make people laugh. As you see, some of them have got millions and millions of views. Then we have the originators, and these are the artists who share the music we live for. They inspire the aesthetics, the movements, the anthems. Originators are the heart of TikTok. They have a finger on the pulse of culture and create the soundtracks that define our year. And here we've got, let's meet Tito M and Yupi. And they're both from South Africa, and they create and share content about their music, the collaborations they do, most recently with Burna Boy. Their passionate community are busy engaging with their music. They're sharing what they like. They're desperate to find out when they're releasing new music. So this is just a taste of some of the most popular areas on TikTok, from educations to foodies and icons to innovators and originators. The reality is that TikTok content covers pretty much every part of life. Go ahead, give it a go. Search for content in the area that you're working in. I'm sure you'll be amazed at what you already find there. So we've taken a look at how social has changed, how the role of TikTok, and some great examples. Now let's talk about the money. This chart shows Google search data for Neutrogena and CeraVe in the United Kingdom. As you can see, around 2004, very few people were searching for CeraVe. Then look what happens. It's an enormous spike over months, absolutely insane levels of intent. And this is Google search data. This is a really good manifestation of people's intent, people's interest. And this wasn't advertising. I'll come and talk about it in a second. It's a huge shift in intent, and it had a massive impact on market share. So CeraVe, I just wanted to sort of dive into a case study of how a brand is able to commercialize TikTok and really sort of and tap into the potential of the communities that they find there. Now, CeraVe is a skincare brand, and it grew its market share by about 70%, which equated to around $300 million in 1 year. And this growth can be traced back to TikTok. It out-engaged its rival by over 10 times. So how? And so if we look at the category, if we understand what's going on there, we'll see skincare is fixated on beauty, but the traditional norms of it is a move from normal to beautiful. And you've all seen those adverts of young, already beautiful people splashing their faces with water, and that's the product, right? But obviously, this isn't how lots of people feel about themselves. For them, it's a question of solving problem skin and getting to normal. That's actually what they're trying to achieve. For example, there's an acne community on TikTok, which is absolutely enormous, like billions of views. So there's a huge community on TikTok looking for help and advice, and they're not getting it through traditional marketing and comms. Now, CeraVe started, as you saw, back from 2004, and it brought an approach to the market that combined dermatologist-developed products, simple, clear, color-coded packaging, and big bottle value. So these are core sort of like 4 Ps there. But then in a genius move, they worked with a few beauty bloggers who had access to big networks of their followers. They'd built communities around their content, and they worked with these bloggers to start talking about CeraVe. And they used TikTok to hook interest because it's so fun, it's so engaging, it's so interesting. And they linked that back to longer form content on YouTube. The emphasis for this content was how to deal with breakouts and skin health, and that hit a nerve. It created a massive spike in demand, huge growth in their market share, shops running out of stock, and their competitors honestly left reeling. And competitor brands asked all the wrong questions in the aftermath. They focused on CeraVe as a product rather than how it was engaging with the market. So hopefully you're all now eager to hear how and where to start, right? So, well, TikTok, like any source of consumer insight, works best when you approach it with a clear plan. Just diving in is going to leave you feeling dazed and disorientated. We think it's, I'm running ahead of myself here. We think it's useful to think about this in 3 stages. First one is collecting the best data to answer your question. Second, transforming this data into insight that's going to inspire. And then finally, how you communicate those insights across the business in a way that will affect change. Now let's think about the data, getting the data right. As with any other project, we start with the end in mind. We don't just get a bunch of TikToks and hope for the best. We think about how are we going to grow our brand? How are we going to acquire new customers? Or how are we going to innovate? When that's clearly defined, we can then start thinking about how we get the data. And it's important to start by articulating your goals into a really clear research brief. For example, let's say we want to grow our share of the South African snack market. We want to be thinking about what potential new audience segments are there and how we can listen to them. This is a really critical step on the journey, defining a clear goal, not just wading into TikTok to see what's out there, because you'll just get lost. When we first started with TikTok, we had to do all the heavy lifting manually. We're collecting the data manually, finding the data, which is a pain, and it's not great because it leaves you open to what's called algorithm fog, where what you see is limited to what the algorithm wants to show you. Now, there are a couple of really great partners that I can recommend if you ask me afterwards, that I really think can really sort of support you in getting the data. And then when you're thinking about what data collect, here are a few questions to sort of think about. Think about how does your audience talk about their lives? What's the language they use? What are the key terms? How can you find those conversations? What expressions, what terms, what hashtags, and what communities do you want to explore? And then what are the motivations, the needs, and the drivers behind their behavior? Then we sort of get into this time to deep dive into the content, to start making sense of it all. And the first step's always going to be to clean the data. The way social listening tools work is you're always going to get a load of false positives. No matter how good your data collection is, there's going to be a load of stuff that isn't relevant to you. We typically work through a few iterations of the data collection process, refining it as we go to ensure that we've got the best data set possible. We then use the analytics of the tools, the stuff that comes in the platforms, to help us understand, right, who's talking, how big is the conversation, how does it change over time, what are some of the biggest trending hashtags and the themes. So we're getting this kind of social listening data from it, which is helpful. And what that does is it helps us build a bit of a quant picture of the conversation, starts to help us develop additional hypotheses to test, i.e. here's a big spike, what does it mean, what is causing that? Then it's time to get into the content to unlock all that amazing value. And this is what I'd say would be the difference between social listening and using social data for research, which is kind of what my agency does. What we do is we use a grounded approach. So we start by looking at the data to identify what people are talking about, the attributes and associations people use to express themselves. In practice, we watch a bunch of TikToks. Yeah, I know, it's a tough life for me. And we make notes about what are people talking about, what the key signals are. And this is where our qual skills come into play. Here we draw on discourse, semiotics, thematic and narrative analysis techniques to unpack the meaning in the data. We need to unpack it all. We start by exploring a random sample. We observe the content in different ways. We watch it loads of times. We look for different aspects each time, and we make a load of notes as we go. What music are they using? What's the aesthetic? What's the narrative of the TikTok? What's being said in the comments? What point is the creator trying to make? What's the individual or cultural context that informs it? We then use these signals to build a code frame so that we can then systematically make sense of the rest of the data. Then we keep watching. We use our code frame to help ensure that we're picking out all the most important signals as we go. And then once you've coded this data, you can then start to make sense of it. You start by looking for patterns. Which codes are used most frequently? What are people talking about? How do they frame their narrative? What's the context? What are their motivations for creating content? And then how do these signals come together to form patterns and groups of behavior? All this process lets you help identify the heat, the hotspots in what people are talking about. And then you can use that to explore the relationships between these different variables. We use this to start to build a story and identify areas for further qualitative analysis. And then you can return to certain videos and build out your thinking around what's really going on and why. We then use synthesis sessions involving our team and our clients to develop and refine and really sort of draw out the core insights and the narrative that we can use to communicate back to their stakeholders. And then just the final stage is really about sort of communicating what you found. And when it comes to reporting, think about how you can build stories out of the glimpses into people's lives that they're giving you on TikTok, and how brands might be able to become part of that conversation in a meaningful way. When you're looking at the data, go back to the challenge you had at the beginning. What were you trying to solve? Then condense your work into 3 or 4 key points that are going to solve the challenge. What are the different points of view that you really want to get across? TikTok teaches us not just about what works on TikTok, but what's important outside it. What you use to learn about emerging trends and get ahead of consumer demand. Like TikTok analysis can be complex. You need the right tools, the right process, the right vision and imagination to make the most of it. But as we've seen, I think it's so worth it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you for the entertainment. We have discovered some very nice influencers. And I agree with the foodie as my favorite, as I say in the comment. So now we get into this panel debate, understanding Africa's youth and their consumer behavior. I'm conscious about time, so I will start asking a first question for Andrea. Well, before that, sorry, is there any comment from the audience? Any question for Jeremy? No. Okay, let's go for the panel. So a first question for Andrea, specialized in understanding youth behavior. We have been seeing different values, aspirations, and how the youth engage with the world. Andrea, can you comment whether there are different behavior across regions in Africa? Because as we said, north, south, east, west, it's a big continent. How could you talk about differences in the values and the way the youth engages with the world that you have seen?
You're on mute, Andrea.
Sorry. Sorry, thank you. So yes, absolutely, there are 100% differences across the regions. I think what's really key in terms of, looking at the youth is that, and I think it's been pretty clear in terms of the presentations we looked at today, is that we can't look at youth homogenistically. We need to understand the individualistic nature, not just in terms of different regions, but I think we need to kind of drill down into understanding their life stages. So yes, there are differences between the regions. I think I don't want to necessarily get into the details across the different, sort of west, south, east, central kind of space, because I think a lot of areas are similar across the regions. But I think what's really critical to understand is we look at the different life stages. So what we've seen, which is really relevant, is that, looking at it from a kind of early versus late teen perspective, if you're looking at a, sort of 12 to 18 market, because within the early and late teens, there's very different expectations that they have of brands. They're going through life very differently. We need to understand, psychologically what their big challenges are, how they're kind of navigating the world. Similarly as well, if we look at, sort of teenagers and students, and then also early workers and later workers. So that's what we've done it quite successfully from our side, is really kind of understanding those life stages, and how and where they're navigating those different life stages, and then also kind of overlaying that with more behavioral characteristics, and looking at them from an individual perspective. I don't know if that gives it much context, but I am also conscious of time.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. And now a question for Nyamburo. Safaricom has deep insights into youth connectivity and digital behavior. What role does mobile and digital communication play in shaping how African youth interact with brands and make purchase decisions? I mean, we've seen a bit now with the TikTok presentation, but what is, according to you, the role that?
Yeah, no, exactly. That was also actually going to be my starting point. I think Jeremy put it very clearly. You can see the impact of TikTok, just as an example of digital, and his example of CeraVe and how that shot up, just based on reviews or comments from influencers. That's just a great example there. However, when I think about growing e-commerce, right? People want more and more not to go to the store. Mobile would enable that, yeah. So, and especially mobile payments, which is now beyond Kenya and beyond Africa. So that enables that. So access payments. I would also say to Andrea's presentation, she spoke about peer-to-peer reviews, peer-to-peer product reviews. The youth live on mobile phones, they're living on social media, and that's where they're getting all the information. So in terms of their product reviews, they're looking at, what is Roy Kanyi saying from Kenya in terms of iPhones versus an Android-based phone. So I think product reviews is also a big one there, and that is being done on mobile and digital. And then the last one probably I would call out is a lot of brands now want to work with the youth on enabling their passions and monetizing their passions as well, and their skills, right? So they're talking about the hustle, and they're also talking about gaming, and this can only be done, in the digital space. So that's another way that brands, are connecting, and I think I think it's paying off for brands that went ahead, brands that are doing it right, that are using data and insights to inform how they actually do it, and brands that are doing it in a culturally relevant way, but translating it in digital. I think that's working for them.
Thank you. And a question for Jeremy. I mean, you're running the boots that create the idea of the company. I guess you came from traditional market research. How did you jump into this digital research and this deep dive into TikTok? What are the differences that you're finding? What sort of insights you see that market research is not providing, and you need to go to these digital sources?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. The idea was in traditional research. I've been in research for about 20 years, about half and half, digital, social, and traditional. I was going to parties and people were showing me Facebooks. This is 13 years ago, right? So it's hard to remember, but it was only 13 years ago where Facebook was kicking off or starting to really get into mainstream adoption. And when you've got that where it's everywhere, and then you've got Twitter being part of the news, it just made me realize that actually our society had shifted, and actually social media content was deeply into the fabric of our lives and was shaping our lives. And as such, it has a really profoundly influential role. And as market researchers at the time, the way that we dealt with that question was to ask people how they used Facebook, which is a terrible question, right? When you've got the data of Facebook, don't ask people how they use it, just look at the data, right? So there wasn't really a great solution to that. So that was the problem that my business is set up to do, really just sort of think about how we get that. What we see with it is that I was thinking this a lot. This whole idea of the say-do gap, I think, is a really great example of social data. Now, I love market research. I've got no problem with it at all, but it's not perfect. So if we're thinking about the things that so traditional methods are really strong at, is asking questions and deliberating and taking people on a considered journey. But those strengths mean that it's quite difficult to uncover what you don't know. And so thinking about social media as a source of what you don't know is a really powerful way of challenging internal perceptions, challenging internal ways of thinking, of being open and being aware to difference and newness. So that will be, for me, one of the primary things that social data gives over and above sort of more traditional market research. And I think if you're going to set something up, you would start with social and then test and refine and quantify through traditional. That's the way that I would do it.
Great. And just staying in this social media sphere, a question for open discussion for you and also the audience. How do brands authentically engage with African youth in the digital space without seeming forced or transactional? How can the brands work in this space in a seamless way?
Yambura, do you want to start with that? Because you're with a brand and I can come in afterwards.
Okay, I think the best is to give an example of our Safaricom Hook platform. So to date, and this was launched October 2023. So we're just slightly over a year. And so far we have about 4 million or so youth on the platform. And, you know, every youth, regardless of where you come from, can log on to the platform and can access any of the 3 pillars. We talk about culture, we talk about careers, and we talk about technology. And under culture, we open the forum for our youth to actually talk to people who've gone ahead of them in terms of music, in terms of art, in terms of creativity, in terms of any area that they would want to explore, right? And they're not paying nothing for that. When we do it from a physical perspective, we go to the universities and, you know, Safaricom would cater for all the expenses of what we call the Safaricom Youth Circle, and would bring in, you know, tech specialists, would bring in scouts from sports agencies, would bring in, you know, different specialists, and this youth would be able to sort of showcase their talents, their skills, their gifts, or even just learn something. As I spoke about the 500 scholarships that were launched when we launched Safaricom Hook or S-Hook, and the 500 youth are actually graduating very soon with tech, you know, tech certificates, and this allows them also to be placed very easily because then they have some experience, they have some certification, you know, behind them. So we don't necessarily force transaction, but we connect with them where they actually need to, where the need is, right? So we identified a need to grow or improve, self-improvement, to showcase their skills, and we honed in on that. Needless to say that they definitely end up also spending with us. They definitely start trusting us as a brand because we've connected them at their point of need. You know, it's just like human relationships. If I come and help you at the point of need, definitely you will trust me more. You will think I am more reliable, dependable, and it's the same way with brands.
I think our perspective would be there's 2 options. You either go direct, and if you're going to go direct, then you need to understand the communities that you're going to be developing a product or a service around. And so deep insight, deep research into those communities so you understand how to talk to them. Or the other option is you go through content creators. And again, they will. It's about finding the right ones that have the right reach, that have the right networks, and that are aligned with your brand values.
And talking about brand values, Andrea, is this fashion of purpose-driven brands, do they have a field in Africa? Is the youth in Africa recognizing these purpose-driven brands? Is this something, a factor that can be recognizable?
Yeah, I think definitely. From what we've seen from the research, is that youth, and I think what I mentioned earlier on, youth are absolutely aligning themselves to brands that align to their values. So whether it is about authenticity, about realness, about honesty, about truthfulness, trust, kindness, they're absolutely looking for that. And I must say, from a Gen X perspective, I find that exceptionally, refreshing. It's not as easy, I think, as it was back in the day to pull the wool over their eyes. I think Nyambura mentioned it earlier on. It's very much about, the realness of the youth coming through, and a lot of the time we don't give them credibility. So yes, the short answer is yes, they absolutely are. I think one thing that I'd like to dispel from a myth perspective is that often we look at brands as being purpose-led by only looking at it from an environmental perspective, and that I think is completely incorrect. Environment is one of the elements. So yes, maybe from a European perspective, environment, there's a lot of emphasis on that. From an African perspective, environment is one of many elements. It's very much about also looking at it from a community perspective. What difference are brands making from a community perspective, on the ground, from an education perspective, in terms of self-development support? How are they supporting the youth? Are they giving them tools and techniques in terms of getting ahead in life? How are they treating their workers, their staff? What does the brand stand for? So it's quite a multifaceted approach. It's not just from an environment perspective.
I think you open up a very interesting discussion. And I have here Jamal's question. I will get back to that later, Jamal. But let me just segue to a question that Stacey had prepared that leads that it's a perfect segue to what you said, Andrea, which is what is one thing brands often get wrong when trying to connect with African youth? And then I will take it to another level, which is what do the rest of the world get wrong about Africa? But that's for the second round. So what do brands get wrong when trying to understand African youth?
I think the first thing I'd like to say is that what brands a lot of the time get wrong is they come in from their perspective and then from their perceptions and their experiences. And I think that a lot of the time don't give youth the opportunity to speak for themselves, and they have kind of, sort of certain myths around. And I think Nyambura had that first slide at the beginning, which I actually had in my presentation as well, very similar points. Youth are lazy, they're entitled, they don't have any money, those kinds of things. And a lot of those points, I think brands often come in with that viewpoint without actually recognizing that maybe their perceptions are wrong. Maybe they need to give youth an opportunity first. I've worked with a lot of brands across a lot of different industries, and a lot of those things, youth don't have money. They don't, they're not taken, they should be seen more seriously. They're too frivolous. All of those kinds of things, I think, are what many brands get wrong. And I'm completely generalizing. I mean, maybe certain brands, get it right. But I mean, that in my experience is what I've seen. And as I say, it kind of goes across industry. There's not a particular brand that gets all of those things right. I think what's important is that brands engage with the youth, listen to what the youth have to say, involve them, in their research, and actually really hear what they have to say, so that they can then, sort of plan and plot a route ahead in terms of what's relevant.
You make me think as a father now. Can you complement Nyambura, Andrea's perspective?
Yeah. So I'll say something that many people do not like to hear, but I'll just say it because it's true. Africa is not one block, right? So when I look at South Africa as an example, the different LSMs are so different. There's no one time that Andrea will advise her clients to, to talk to the LSMs generally. They're so different, right, in South Africa. In Kenya, we have the rural consumer, and then we have the rural youth, and then we have the urban youth. They might dress the same, but in terms of their aspirations, sometimes would be very, very different because of their exposure. So Africa is not one block. I think we also saw from the TikTok examples, we had someone from Kenya, another one from Nigeria, and another one from Ghana. While we look the same, maybe in terms of color, we're not the same, right? And I think the biggest opportunity for brands, especially brands that cut across multiple countries, like my former employer, of course, would be Coca-Cola, is to ensure that you co-create and just tap into the culture of that particular segment that you want to talk to.
Great. I see now this comment. Africa is not a country. Just let me tell you that there is an airport in Austria just specialized to tell people that this is not Australia. So you're not the only ones misunderstood. So there is this question from Jamal. What is the incidence of the use of artificial intelligence by the youth in each relevant country? Is there any impact on their consumer behavior? I mean, is there artificial intelligence impacting consumer behavior? Or we can understand that through TikTok's artificial intelligence or Instagram's artificial intelligence, there is this effect, maybe.
There will be. I can't speak to it. I can only speak to it in generality. So I don't know. I don't have any data on penetration and usage of it, but we know that the algorithms are driven by it. We know that there's fake content being created by it. It's all a big melting pot of stuff that's going on. I haven't got anything more profound to say than that. It's kind of, I think we just need to see how it pans out.
Maybe you can help for the following question, which is from Mary Zach saying that he sees a return of the youth to Facebook because they want to access the marketplace or search for hustles, babysitting, dog sitting. Have you seen anything to back this up? For this is still a timid signal. Is there any real change of behavior? Youth going back to Facebook, or Facebook is no more for youth?
Yeah, again, I haven't seen the stats, but I wouldn't be at all surprised because Facebook, you can't forget. I talked a lot about TikTok, but Facebook is still massive. It's still easily the biggest social platform by 2 or 3 times. And on it, you've got a ton of consumers and you've got a really strong active marketplace. So the thing that I find interesting is the coalition of people around the ability to buy in the same space. So when you think about Amazon, Amazon's amazing, but Amazon doesn't inspire you to buy anything. Facebook does, TikTok does. And so you've got these social platforms, which are also becoming e-com platforms and fulfillment platforms all in one place. So I'm fascinated by that. I hadn't seen that stat before, but it doesn't surprise me at all because you've got a ton of people on there wanting to buy stuff through marketplaces, and entrepreneurial youth are going to find any channel possible to get goods to market.
Great. Andrea?
I just want to add to that. We actually did a study for a client last year where we actually asked young people around different reasons for using different types of social media platforms. And very much to Jeremy's point, Facebook is absolutely still popular. We've definitely seen a massive decline from our side. I mean, we don't obviously track numbers, but we've seen sort of popularity of Facebook obviously decreasing versus like an Instagram or a TikTok. But when it comes to things like buying things online or connecting with friends and family, Facebook obviously skews higher versus, for example, consumption of video content, which would be TikTok. So we just kind of looked at that, and I just want to add that to the point. Yeah, I mean, Facebook it's not dead. It's just used for potentially different things than, TikTok or YouTube would be.
Thank you, Andrea. So just to close, one final conclusion from each one of you. What would be yours, Jeremy, from this session? One final message you would like to let us?
My final message would be that Africa is not a country, as well explained by Charity, when she turned up at Davos and held a sign outside saying Africa is not a country. Look, TikTok, I think social is really interesting. I think for researchers, let's get into it. Let's bring it into the fold. Let's assume that, let's know that it has a really important role to play in how we understand the world and how we understand youth culture. I think it's fundamental. I'd like to see it more embedded into the way that we go about understanding people in the world.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Nyamburu.
Yeah, sure. So I think to researchers and also to marketers who we work very closely with is to remember that AI at the moment is not fully fed with the African consumer or African content. So we really must marry AI with HI, which is human insights. So AI at the moment cannot give you all the answers as accurately as possible. If today we turned on an AI, it might call me a man because I have short hair today, and it probably is not seeing my earrings or my lipstick because it's just not fed well. So let's couple AI with HI.
That's a very good message. Thank you. Andrea?
I think the message that I just want to leave behind is for brands to get out there and actually speak to youth. You know, and that would be a combination of, you know, using digital research, social listening, you know, qual, quant, traditional, whatever it is, but give youth an opportunity to tell you what they're doing, give input. They're so open to collaborating. They're so open to innovative technologies and methods and techniques. Give them an opportunity to say what they would like to say, and give input to, you know, whatever you're doing to inform, you know, strategies, brands, NPD, etc.
Thank you. I see Anne-Sophie, you want to say something before closing?
Yes, thank you, Joachim. Yes, first of all, I would like to thank you all. Great presentations, nice discussions. And on my hand, I keep two things. The one from Jeremy, that social life is real life. Is most of the time we make a lot of disconnection between these two lives, but I think it's really important. And also something you said, Andrea, and something I heard in previous presentation from African people, the role of the ground in Africa, trying to get to be really close to the ground and to avoid, of course, being into cliché. This woman who was talking about architecture was really, really funny. And to give my final word and to give perspective and to bring global perspective. And again, what you said, Andrea, and that's true. Brands see consumers and people through their eyes, and of course they need us to bring a different angle, a new perspective. This is why, of course, we're here, and this is how research can help brands, of course. So thank you so much. I learned a lot today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. And my final words are thank you so much, Jeremy, Andrea, Nyamburu. Thank you so much, Anna Lu, for organizing this. Thank you so much, Stacy. You are not here today, but you are here because I've been following your script and you've been our inspiration. And for the rest, for the audience, I really hope you have enjoyed this session. Please help us in shaking the community in Africa, promote sessions like this one, our community circles, promote the dialogue, the communication, promote this creation and recreation of the community in Africa, and let's put Africa in the map of the events of our industry and our sector. So please help us also in promoting our activity in Africa in collaboration with national associations or just Esomar in its own. So thank you so much and look forward to seeing you in coming events. Thank you.